Smart, where I interview friends, colleagues, and experts regarding a range of topics, starting with personal development, moving on to professional development, and finally to business development, looking for the intersection between all three. And I think everybody I've had on the podcast has had a different perspective on what that means. And I think Mahoney, who I worked with, a digital marketer, definitely will. So welcome, Molly.
Hey, I'm so stoked about you doing this. I think it's a very important conversation, and it's something that I believe people probably avoid. So I'm
Oh,
glad they're
yeah.
here to dig in.
Well, you know what's funny is because I definitely avoided this. And honestly, I think the biggest excuse people have is like, oh, that's like woo-woo
Yeah,
self-help stuff.
self-help.
Like
Yeah.
I'm too real for that stuff. And that was totally me. And then I discovered that like literally nothing I was doing was real because I wasn't, you know,
Yeah.
myself. And it's hard to even describe what that means, but maybe you can. So what do you think about the kind of shell that we put around ourselves to be acceptable in different settings, whether it's as like the business person or as the mom or the parent? Why do we do that? Why do we put on these masks every time we go into a new situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think the real reason is because we don't actually even know who we are. And so there's these habits that we've created or we've developed. I guess you don't really create the habits that we've developed because of the response we get from other people. And so we continue to use those same techniques or strategies in the way that we be and the way that we show up and the way that we communicate because we know we'll get a certain response. So like when you're talking to your kids, you know that you're going to get this kind of response. When you're talking to your spouse, whether or not it's the response that you want to get, somehow, we get into these habits of like of this call and response of like, well, I'm going to show up and be strict, or I'm going to show up and be positive, or whatever it is. But if we don't get to the root of who we actually are underneath it all, it's all just this like shiny veneer, this lacquer that we're pasting on top of everything. And you're going to end up burnt out and you're going to end up miserable and unhappy.
Yeah, well, and for me personally, like I didn't know that it was coloring all of my decisions. Is this facade that I put up because there was nothing. Well, there was something deep, deep, deep underneath.
Yeah.
But since it was so buried, it was kind of like impossible to be like, oh yeah, that's why I'm making this decision.
And some oftentimes it's like to protect us. We've had some sort of fight or flight, or we've had some sort of thing that's been built in from our childhood, or however you want to look at it. But it's a protection mechanism, and we are often, I think, afraid of what will happen if we do figure out who we really are,
Oh yeah.
and if we do show up as our quote unquote authentic self, because we're afraid we're going to get troll comments, or we're afraid someone's going to leave us as a client, or we're afraid that our partner or our kids or our friends or whatever will be turned off somehow, as opposed to really knowing that the best thing that we can do is show up as who we actually are.
Oh yeah. Well, and what I realized was you literally have to. And I forget who quoted, I think it was a comedian that said it, but basically it was like, you don't, if you're basing your like or hate of me based on a limited amount of traits, like it's not really me that you love or hate. It's some perception that you made up based on the experiences of me that you've had. And so in order to actually like somebody completely, you have to like everything about them, whether that's good or bad. And that's super hard. It's super hard to like present everything, right?
Well, and a big piece of this, I think, often comes up because of how we judge others. And we're so lucky to be in the business that we are in, because we are provided with the opportunity to face this ish all the time. So like, negative comments, troll comments, whatever, that kind of stuff that can come at us, it gives us a chance to confront those feelings and see how we are going to respond. And oftentimes I'll hear people that are like so judgy about others, and it's really because they're putting that judgment on themselves as well, where it's like, if we could give everyone the benefit of the doubt, or if we could give some grace, we'd also give more grace to ourselves.
Yes, because ultimately, who you're talking to is you, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
no, I
You
know
hear the thought before it comes out of your mouth, so you're
yeah.
you're actually hearing it before anybody else does.
Oh, it's crazy. Now we did just launch into this, and there is a reason, in case anybody's wondering, like, wow, this is really deep, really super quick. And it's because does this amazing job online of actually she creates all the content herself for her channel, but then she also teaches others how to present themselves and create their own content based on their authentic self. And she does it from the perception of somebody who's been in a million hours of acting training and performance. And I love that about you. And
Thanks.
it's
And
not an easy path.
it's not. And I think a lot of people, they think, our company is the prepared performer. And it's like, well, how do you prepare to perform? And the biggest thing, and I actually learned this getting my BFA in theater, is that we have to like live to be prepared. We've got to live to be prepared. And I remember there's like two main people that I think I really learned how to show up authentically from. One is Konstantin Stanislavski, who is an acting theorist, and the other is Po from Kung Fu Panda.
Huh. I like that. You have the advanced example and the cartoon.
I know, yeah. So I was going to say like the
Which is
advanced
which?
example and then the human, but Poe's really the advanced example. I'm just kidding. But so when I was in college, and I may have told you this before, but there was this chart that was on the wall in our classroom that was everything that it takes to be like Meryl Streep, right? Like everything that it takes to be like a true actor. And there were all these different things like memory recall and the moment before and the magic if and all these different strategies and tactics. And on the very bottom of this chart there was one huge thing that said work on one's self.
Uh,
And if you didn't do that, then none of the other things mattered, because it was all that lacquer that's being put on top of something else. And we are so habitually trained to put on a performance, even if we're not actors or putting on some sort of air, that really they suggested in this class, like pay attention to the way that you brush your teeth, pay attention to, really what are like the real things. Once you strip all of that away, who are you? And in Kung Fu Panda, he's trying to teach the other animals to be ninjas, and they're not listening. They are like not fighting the way that he wants them to. And this one panda allows itself to roll down the hill and kind of have a good time and play around, and it knocks out all the other animals on the bottom of the hill. And in that moment, the camera, quote unquote, pans in on Poe's face, and he says, I don't need to teach you to be more like me. I need to teach you to be more like you.
ooh, love that.
Right. And that's where things really start to work.
Imagine a world where your brand transcends visibility, embedding itself into the consciousness of your customers. Welcome to the AI Branding Bootcamp, where this vision becomes reality. Dive into AI-powered research, strategy, and execution to create a brand that's not just recognized, but felt. From crafting your brand's avatar to mastering AI-generated content, emerge with a brand that resonates deeply. Ready to transform your brand into an unforgettable experience? Join us at the AI Branding Bootcamp. The future of branding begins now. Ah, that's amazing. Well, it's it's very abstract, and it's hard to tell people, because actually I've thought about the acting profession itself, because I was like, man, why are there so many, and this is picking on stereotypes, but like there's a lot of corrupt actors, there's a lot of addiction, there's a lot of
Yeah, because you go through a
abuse.
lot. Like you have to like literally like look at Christian Bale, for example. And I don't know if he's had problems with addiction or, been given that opportunity to face, but he talks about the fact that he stays in character. Oh, I just raised my hand
You sure
accidentally.
did.
Sorry.
Thanks,
He
man.
talks about the fact that he stays in character the whole time. So like in this whatever the Marvel movie that he was, where he's like the bad guy, that he like stays in that character
Oh
the
yeah.
whole time. Like talk about like messing with your head.
Well,
But
and that's what I
good
was coming
actor.
to, which is like, okay, if you don't have the solid base of who you are, if you take on another persona like Christian Bale, method acting and staying in the anger state, like how much does that actually impact you, you and your personality?
Yeah. And what
If
process do you have to get in and out of that? And
oh,
I think
that's
that's
a good
something else
point.
that we don't give ourselves the gift of enough in business. I remember at one point when I was doing a lot of live videos, I felt like I had these fragmented versions of myself all over, and it was like little pieces of me in these videos, and they were all being responded, like the messenger bots were taking over in the chat underneath it all. So it was really like I needed to figure out how to keep
Mm,
myself in while also putting myself out. And if you don't have a process for regrouping with who you are, you're going to get in trouble.
Oh, that's such an important point, because you see it sometimes, especially with like the gurus. You see they get to a certain state of like significance, we'll call it, where it's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, everybody knows their names, everybody is quoting them on stuff. And I could see how that would, it'd be tough if you don't have like a base of humility and a base of, personal development and all these different kind of attributes to secure your personality, that it would start to get skewed into like, oh my gosh,
totally.
I don't miss. I'm the best at everything. And you wonder how people get there, but honestly, it's
Well, and I
anybody
mean,
would.
yeah, there's that could go down a whole thing, I think being open to like setting boundaries, open to feedback from a place of love. Like I remember I don't know if I've told you this story, but someone joined our program way back in the day. We had our main course was called Camera Confidence, TM, trademark on that one. So when people would come, there was a woman who joined Camera Confidence when it was first new. And she messaged me and she said, "Hey, I almost didn't join after watching your masterclass. Would you like to know why?" And I said, yeah, I'm open to feedback, whatever. And she said that the faces that you make at the beginning of your video are like very off-putting, and it almost like scared me away. And at the time, I used to start my videos by like dancing at the beginning. So if you watch my old videos, I am definitely like a psycho. So you think I have a lot of energy now? Like those were they were out of control. But I like used to do this dancing thing. And I said, "Oh yeah, not everybody likes that, but I've heard from a lot of people they actually really appreciate the fact that we start with this kind of party." And she wrote back and said, "It wasn't your dancing, it was your actual face, like through your whole video."
Like I can't change
Okay.
that.
So I wrote back and I said, "Thank you for your feedback, but that's my actual face. So I don't think I'm going to be able to change that." And I said, "We really encourage people to celebrate who they are." And she was like very straight laced. Like the only thing that I could, and this is not derogatory at all. This is like straight up what it looked like. Like there was something very Amish about it. It
Mm.
was very like prairie, like I don't know. It was very serious. And so I just loved on her and I said, "Thank you for whatever. And we want you to celebrate in your own unique way as well." And she went back and said, "I'm so grateful for this response because this lets me know that I can lean into who I am. In the future, I'm going to put a book over the video so I don't have to see your face."
It's pretty good that it ended with, "I still hate your face."
Yeah,
Like,
I was like,
oh, I don't know what
great.
to do with that. You could not sign up if you don't want to.
Yeah,
I
but at
won't
least
lie.
she paid me and she took the course. So I
Ah,
was like, that
there
was
you
one of my
go.
first moments of being like, this is gonna be interesting.
Oh, what's funny though is I have my autistic son, and so it kind of starts skewing how I see everybody's statements, because sometimes it's like that. Somebody says a blatantly mean thing, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, they're totally serious about this. Maybe it's a slight disability, or
Well,
you
and
know,
I think that's such a great point that we all have our own filters. We all have our own lack of filters. We all have our own way of showing up and communicating, and he just has a different way of communicating. And so what a gift for you to be able to see that so, close at hand. And we have a member who helps parents navigate their IEPs with their kids at
Mm,
school. And I went back and taught social media marketing at our local
okay.
performing arts high school for an
Oh, good
entire
for you.
year last year because
Oh, a
I was
year.
crazy.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. It was amazing,
I was
actually.
like, one time I'd be
Yeah,
like,
no,
you're a
every
saint.
Thursday for an entire year, 10th graders. It was awesome. And I just didn't have time to do it. So I only did it for that year. But I learned so much just seeing the way the kids communicate. Like my own kids, they have different stuff too. But if we can give people grace and recognize, okay, maybe they don't realize I believe they're sounding like a jerk.
Yeah, well, you seem blatantly offensive.
Yeah,
Who
wild. So
says that?
it's important, I believe, to have like actual strategies in place to help you to be able to figure this stuff out. And I know, like, obviously, you are like the AI machine now as well. But if we don't get that stuff figured out before we use AI,
Oh,
when you're writing in your
good point.
brand voice and you don't know who you are as a human, you're going to create either zombie content or you're going to create like just a mess.
Oh,
So it's really important to get clear about that on so many levels.
yes. Well, and I think a further thing is just, you do need that base of personal value, because if you don't have that and somebody comes, like the trolls that you're talking about, comes online and says something just super mean, and you don't have any base to argue, not that you should ever engage these people, because most of them are just miserable people, and it's
Yeah, it is like my favorite thing to do
is
to
is
engage
confronting
trolls.
the
Okay,
trolls. Oh,
because what I
I just
do
move
is
on.
I spin it, and I don't know how, but it's my actual favorite game where I love on them, and it's a little cheeky. I always screenshot it and post it, But there was one time someone said something really rude, and I don't even remember what he said. But he said something rude, and I replied with love, and I let them know it's not okay to talk to me that way, and I reply with love. This guy sent me a message privately, and he said, we just posted it on Instagram. It was from a while ago, but we just reposted it. So I can grab it
Oh
and
yeah.
show you what the actual quote was. But he said, I had to reach out because I said something rude. I wrote a not nice comment on one of your videos, and you should have replied in a rude way back, basically. And he said, and you didn't. And what this showed me, Mark, I literally was like, my jaw was on the floor when I read this message, because he said, you replied the way that Jesus would have responded.
Mm,
Like, whoa. And he said, so I'm here with my sincere apology, and I just want to thank you for the way you show up.
that's awesome. It's
Which is not
amazing.
always the easiest thing to do. And
But when
sometimes
you
I
did,
just delete them. But if I can be a little funny and snarky, but also loving, even better.
well, and I think both ways are acceptable, because it's really
Yeah.
based on your personality. For me, like with social, like I don't like doing it so much that
Yeah.
if I get negative feedback for doing something I don't like to do anyways, I'm like, oh, all right, I hate this. This is terrible. So
Yeah.
for me, I just well, I'm good at making content, so I just make lots of content. I hire somebody to post that content on
Yeah.
social, and then I try to, I do respond as much as I can, especially to professional comments. But yeah, it just
It
drains
can be, and that's again knowing your own boundaries,
me. Mhm.
back to that thing in the first place as well. And I have two things that have been really,
Ooh,
really helpful for me with this. One is to keep a collection of the nice things that people say about
ah,
you.
that's so good.
So like go there, and we have a Slack channel, in our Slack channel, that if anyone sees like a testimonial or a win or something that someone says they were grateful for that we did as a company, it goes into that Slack channel.
Mm,
So all of those things are in there. So I know I can go to that Slack channel and I can just read it. I have like letters that kids sent me when I used to
uh,
coach kids on singing stuff. Like those things are really important for us because we do sometimes get hit with a lot of negativity. The other thing that I started doing about 2 years ago is every Wednesday in the afternoon, I have a giant, like several hour chunk of time blocked off for learning and creating magic.
mm,
So, and that's what it says, learn or create magic. And this is a time when I can go on take a dance class, or I can go, sit at the piano, or I can go make like handmade felted art, or it's just ways to reinvigorate my own magic, because we
mhm.
get so committed to what we're doing in our business that sometimes we completely forget who we were, even if we did take the time to figure it out. So I find that can be really, really helpful.
Oh, those are awesome tips, because it's yeah, you do need to counter it rather than just like be able to weather it, if that makes sense. Like, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just
And
recharge.
yeah, now you don't have to like, I mean, that's a good way to say it, right? Like weather the storm. And when it comes to the trolls and things like that, if you can find a way to play with it, and if you're comfortable, depending on what the comment was, if you're comfortable with making like a joke around it, we took this comment that we got that said, you talk too much, that's how you make money, and it's annoying. That was a comment that I got on a video, and we turned it into the Halloween costume meme, that spirit Halloween costume. And we called the costume the Chatty Moneybags marketing coach. And it made fun of me. My husband made me write on it like all the things that were included. And then he said not included her car keys. She can't find them. So it creates like this common denominator. So people know if you're willing to make fun of yourself, they
Mm.
feel better about themselves as well. And that's when some of our highest engagement content is when we take those negative comments and we poke fun at them, and we celebrate the authenticity.
Well, and honestly, you sharing things that are really, not positive things. That's why you're sharing them. Actually shows your confidence. And so I always say it's like
Totally.
who looks strong, the person who looks like they've never failed ever in their life, or the person who's like, oh yeah, I acknowledge my weaknesses. Everybody
Yeah.
has them, and then
Yep.
I'm moving forward because this is part of
Yeah.
who I am. No, that's a
Agreed.
great, I think, really healthy way to do it. And just so everybody knows, like, it is a contact sport, doing social media marketing. It's not, it's my son's about to start playing football, which I was not super excited about, but he never played tackle football. And I'm like, dude, like, just so you know how you get
Yeah.
upset when I yell at you for, not taking out the trash? Well, that's going to be, the least of your worries. Plus, you're going to get hit a lot.
Yeah,
So,
so I heard, I fell in October and I really messed up my wrist. I sprained my tendon. And watching the Super Bowl, I was like, how do these
what the
people do
hell?
this? Like from one little fall, that was in October. This is now February. I'm like, how on earth are they doing this? Like, I do not understand, but
Oh,
clearly
well,
they're
between
athletes.
that, we watched rugby over the weekend too, and I was just like, man, these guys just full speed running into each
Yeah.
other. I'm like, best case scenario is you have lots of bruises, like that's just everywhere. I'm
True.
like, and
Everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
but these
And
guys
I
pop
mean, I
up.
was a professional dancer, so like this
Oh,
is nothing
pain.
compared to what I
Yeah.
went through, like just wearing heels
Ugh.
and dancing, like 42nd Street and heels, tap dancing is like
Oh,
just
it's
as hard as
brutal.
football.
Oh yeah. Well, but it's part of it, and
Yeah.
honestly, it's a barrier to entry, which makes it even more valuable for the people who are able to do it.
Hey, and that's such a perfect like real nugget around showing up in business because a lot of people aren't actually brave enough to even show up. So if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you're brave enough to actually show up. So, really be proud of yourself for that too, because it's a
Yeah,
thing.
it is. Yeah, and
Hey,
well,
and
and then
one other book I didn't mention, like with Konstantin Stanislavski, Poe from Kung Fu Panda, also Gay Hendricks. The Big Leap, like literally changed my life in terms of how to navigate like pushing ourselves to the next level and doing the inner work. And The Little Prince. Have you read
The
that
Little
book?
Prince. Oh yeah, I used to
I
love that one as
love
a
it.
kid.
So those are two good ones too.
No, it's fantastic. Well, and it's very, it's unconventional because a lot of times, prior to kind of, when I feel like I woke up, I really thought everything was just systems, right? Like, oh yeah, you put a
Yeah.
solution in place, you set up the systems, and then you execute the systems, and that's what the business is, and that's what you are. And now,
Nice try, sucker.
now I'm kind of like, oh yeah, yeah, we're all robots. All you gotta do is program us and we run. And I think because of this whole AI thing, and we're having to look at that, like, what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to use a machine to do work? I think it's really important that people recognize that it's not about systems. It's not even about tasks that you do, because I could be,
Yeah.
honestly, I was completely miserable for like 25 years, not completely miserable, but I was not a happy person for 25 years. And I, couldn't see it.
Yeah. And
So,
that is why we come back to like work on oneself. Like and
yeah.
don't expect to be able to see it on your own. It's like, we've got to get some sort of support to help you to be able to figure that out because
But you need the
life is a
feedback.
contact sport.
Yeah. Well, the thing is for me, and what I was trying to get to was like, yes, I ran the systems. Yes, I was seen as like a polite guy and a nice guy or whatever, people thought of me, but it wasn't really me because I wasn't presenting anything.
Mm,
I wasn't showing anything. And so even that perception was pretty wrong. So you can go through life with systems and with hiding everything if you want to, but it's a very sad way to live. And there's way better ways to do it. And if you are able to achieve this kind of like, okay, I feel comfortable enough to actually post stuff publicly, that's a huge step. And
yeah.
and you'll shock yourself. You'll show up if you just keep on trying.
And it feels so much better because then you don't have to live this dual life where you're one version online, you're one version with your team, you're one version with clients, you're one version with your partner, you're one version with your kids. Like you'll actually be the same human being no matter where you are, and you won't be running an episode of Catch Me If You Can.
Exactly. No, that's
Yeah.
a good way to look at it. And I think
Okay.
yeah, it's easy. Just start posting social media. The world will tell you what you are. I don't recommend, get yourself in place, and there's a bunch of different ways to do it. But I think this is a good intro to you, Molly. And
Yeah,
I definitely want you
thanks.
back on the
Great.
show to talk about more of this stuff, because I think what you do is super unique. And honestly, I think the skills that you have and that you're teaching people are going to become hyper relevant as everybody realizes that if they don't have an online brand, like, you just don't exist. Like, it's
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, are you even here? I don't know.
Are you? Well, it's like, how are people
Oh my
going to
gosh.
find you?
Yeah. Awesome. This
Don't
has
go
been
off.
so great. And I hate looking at the clock because I'm realizing I need to be somewhere else
No, I
now.
know.
But thank you so much, and I'm so grateful that you're putting this out there in the way that you are. So
Yeah, we'll see.
I can't wait to dig in and chat about it more.
Yes. Well, I'm going to come up with a little series for you, especially because I think we have a lot of things to discuss. And I think there's a lot of, this intersection of the three elements of
Yeah.
development that I talk about.
I'm excited to talk more with you about Facebook groups also at some point because of all the changes that are happening, because it is getting wild, and there's actually so many good things happening, even though everyone's freaking out.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So we'll leave that as a little like FOMO for the next episode.
Okay. Well, we're going to get you scheduled. We'll get you in there. In the
Awesome.
meantime, where can people learn about you?
In my Facebook group actually would be a great place. So if you go to molly.live/group, we are just filling it with so much goodness inside there. So check us out there. We've got AI trainings, we have social media trainings, we have ways to figure out your unique quesadilla of awesome, as we call it, which is really all the stuff we talked about today, how to figure out how you can be more you.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Molly. Appreciate your time.
You're the best.
And thank you so much for listening. This has been Podcast Mark. Tune in next time for more intersection of personal and professional.